Not only is The Last of Us Part 2 my favorite game ever made on PlayStation, The Last of Us as a franchise at this point, Part 1 and Part 2, are two of my favorite games of all time, regardless of, console or PC. It is one of my favorite franchises ever. And obviously, with the show that came out, the show is absolutely incredible. The team over at Naughty Dog has really taken great care of this franchise at this point, and that's why they take so much time to bring something out like The Last of Us Factions 2. We've been waiting for so long for Factions 2 to come out, and they're just taking their time with it. And I'm totally on board with them taking their time with this upcoming multiplayer experience that's going to bring us back to the game over and over and over again, and to the franchise over and over again. But one question I have is about The Last of Us Part 3. There's been no confirmation of it. Neil Druckmann had mentioned that, if they want to make another game in the Last of Us franchise, they absolutely will. But it's totally up to them, and Sony has given them complete control of their franchises and trust their judgment on these things. And I think that really says a lot about Naughty Dog, first of all. I mean, they had Uncharted, which was incredibly successful. They dive into something new with The Last of Us. That's been incredibly successful. I'm sure they're talking about some untitled games that, in the future that are going to be coming out. I'm sure those are going to be awesome as well. Really, the bottom line is that whatever Naughty Dog brings out moving forward, many people, myself included, are going to be watching. We're going to be playing to at least see what it's all about, because Naughty Dog has a way of creating some very fascinating stories. They are so good at not only the action adventure elements of games, but now diving into horror more and more. That is something that they have absolutely crushed, and it is something that they've done incredible numbers with. They have built this franchise into something very, very special. In my mind, topping Uncharted, when I never thought Uncharted could get really topped by something, especially from the same studio. Naughty Dog is that studio, the studio of our time that creates some incredible experiences. But will The Last of Us Part 3 come out? I gotta tell you guys, I don't think that Naughty Dog has any, there's no indication that's telling me that they would not make a third game. At least to make it a trilogy at the bare minimum makes complete sense to me. Even if they wanted to round out the trilogy and say their next game, so after Factions 2, they bring out a new IP altogether, I wouldn't be concerned about it, because they probably want to test the waters maybe with something else, get those creative juices flowing, and they can consider, coming back and working on another Last of Us game, that being The Last of Us Part 3 or Part 4, wherever they are in terms of development. The Last of Us Part 3 has such a, there would be so much anticipation, so much hype, so much excitement for that title, especially if Factions 2 does incredibly well. When The Last of Us Part 3 would get announced, so many people, and they could use The Last of Us Part 2 factions to promote Part 3. I just think it makes total sense to create a third title in this franchise. Whether you wanted to round out Ellie's story, whatever it is that you wanted to do, you could absolutely do it with a third game. I don't think that they have any, in my mind, any indication that this is a series that is done at this point after 2 games. Doesn't make a lot of sense to me. They would at least do a trilogy before they would move on to something else. And I think that they would test the waters with something else to see how another franchise does before giving up on The Last of Us, or letting that one go before they move on to something else. Kind of like with Uncharted, they make all these games, and The Last of Us comes into the fray, and obviously the popularity of The Last of Us probably gave them that peace of mind, letting Nathan Drake's story go and moving on to Ellie and Joel and the story that we got in The Last of Us. But what do you guys think? Do you think that we'll ever get a Last of Us Part 3? I would love to hear your guys' thoughts about this. Let's have a real conversation about it in the comment section down below. And for more The Last of Us Part 3 content and videos, stay right here with zrotv.